participate in this work group and to get the work going with our needs assessment. So as you can see, we're focusing on these programs within our blueprint work, and we're also partnering with CACFP, which we've begun doing over the last year to ensure full year access to child nutrition programs, which includes we're partnering on promoting our programs, cross-training, data sharing, reviews, technology. So really just working together to make sure that we are reaching all eligible entities that could be participating in our program. We also thought we could just quickly talk about terminology, because I know we've been we basically have been saying SFA a lot, and I know that that's not something everyone talks about regularly, or SFAs. So the two terms that we use to describe our audience are School Food Authority, which we'll commonly say SFA, and we do not use the word, the School Food Authority is the entity that administers and is responsible for running the child nutrition program. We don't say school district because SFA also includes non-public schools, so private schools, charter schools, and facility schools. So that's kind of our catch-all umbrella term to describe the entities that are administering our programs. And then we refer to summer sponsors as sponsors because it includes SFAs, but it also includes nonprofits, universities, camps, and government entities who are eligible to operate the summer meal program. So I didn't go too far into data, but I wanted to just provide a little bit of context of the scope of our reach. So I don't know why I really love this table. I thought it was really interesting when I first started working at CDE, that just the breakdown of the size of the school food authorities that we work with. So we work with over 207 school food authorities who administer the National School Lunch Program. And as you can see, the majority of those SFAs are between 51 and 500 total student enrollment. So we are across the state and a varying size. And so we also provided a fact sheet, which is, we're about to release our new fact sheet with up-to-date information, but there's some data from 2016, 2017 on that fact sheet, just showing a breakdown of the free food percentage reach and meal counts and reimbursements. But we'll provide the latest numbers when we receive those. And then lastly, I know this is a big area of the blueprint that has been addressed in our last conversation about full year access. And as you probably all know, Colorado has one of the highest, I think, if not the highest amount of 4-day school weeks in the nation. So here is a nice visual to see the school districts in blue are all, school districts in blue are all operating a 4-day school week. So that is definitely an area of focus that we're working with CACFP and the summer meal program to ensure that we are ensuring those students are receiving a meal when they're not in school.
Carrie, what's the green? I can't read that.
It's some schools, yes.
Okay. Within the district?
Within the district, yeah. Does anyone have any questions about our office and some of the work that we're currently doing before I hand it over to Gabby?
Yeah. So there were 207 SFAs. Can you talk about like the overlap of school districts or districts that share SFAs, or is there like an overlap there?
Can you explain, or?
Sorry, so like is there alignment, like can there be more than one SFA in like school district?
So
I
think I know what you're saying. So like charter schools, for example, might all join together and create an SFA.
Yeah.
But as far as districts, I don't think there are multiple districts within an SFA.
I think I was trying to ask the question.
So they're charter school collaboratives where one charter school will take the responsibility as the school food authority, and then they will have several other charter schools in which they work with to administer the program.
Can you tell me what provisional programs are?
Yeah. So,
It's her specialty.
Oh, okay.
That's your
She got
specialty.
very excited when I asked her
oh,
that.
I used previously in my when I first started at CDE, I oversaw provision programs, so I enjoy talking about it.
Okay.
So provision programs, we administer the community eligibility program and Provision 2 in Colorado, and it's often referred to as CEP, community eligibility provision. There's a lot of awareness and talk around CEP, so it's probably the one that anyone has heard about. And really the goal of provision programs is to provide free meals to all students in high need areas. And if I go any further, I'm going to get really technical, but it's yeah. But I think that is a strategy that's outlined in the blueprint, and I think that would be something that we discuss.
I just didn't know that it fell under that provision.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah.
I have a question about private schools.
Yeah.
And CDE, I know that this is the second school year with private schools.
Yeah. First.
How many are you seeing? How many private school food authorities do you have?
It's like 30 or 40.
I was gonna say 38, but I
Yeah.
could be wrong.
Yeah. So we have state law state law that previously the local USDA regional office, the Mountain Plains region, oversaw all of the private schools who administered the National School Lunch Program historically. And so this is the first year that we have now taken over those schools. So this is their first year, and some of them are operating the National School Lunch Program, some are just operating the special milk program.
Are any of them more than one location? Or have they joined together similar to the way that charter schools have in certain areas? Or are they single entities of a private school, maybe with multiple locations or so?
Good question. I don't think so, but I can check on that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're all single entities.
Yeah, and that's something that we've started getting questions. There are a lot of these private school or non-public schools are facility schools, day treatment centers, and so there's a lot of different criteria, and just so I think that's going to be a focus. And once we onboard them with the program and work with them with training and reviewing that, I think that that's an area that we will eventually look at, is seeing how to bring more of those institutions on, or those private schools on, and certainly working together, because there are a lot of really limited resources. There's not necessarily a food service director running that program.
Are those 38 included in your 207?
Yeah. Yeah.
More data about where those non-public schools are and the number of participating students would be beneficial to
Okay.
the overall goal of 5.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely provide that. I think the majority of them are in Denver, and so over the next few months, we're going to be doing what we call Kickstart. So they're one-on-one technical assistance visits, and so we'll be getting more into the field and trying to assess their needs and providing that support that they need. I think that next step would be seeing if we can maybe bring some of those schools onto the program, maybe that are just doing special milk. Yeah. Great. Yeah.
So does that mean that they're, like, the private schools are receiving some type of reimbursement from the feds for running those programs, or is it now coming from the CDE?
It's coming through us.
Okay. Yeah. I understand the shift. Thanks.
Yep. so we then took over the reimbursement. Now we'll take over the monitoring. So they were being monitored by the Mountain Plains region. Yeah, so we've taken all of that. So it's a bit of a process in onboarding those schools this year.
So Gabby, do you have a little microphone here?
I do.
Perfect.
Yep,
Thank
right here.
Thanks.
Great. So good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Gabby, and I am helping out with this blueprint project for CD until September. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our needs assessment and our planning grant. So on this slide, this is kind of a little bit of a what, who, why. I guess where isn't in there, but we're here. So we are in the middle of our planning grant. This goes until September of 2019. This is something that the School Nutrition Unit, formerly Office of School Nutrition, was awarded. And through this grant, we're conducting a needs assessment to identify the gaps and assets and opportunities to increase really both student participation as well as program participation. So they're kind of both important pieces to this to access child nutrition programs. And we're also looking at internal processes for process improvement. So making sure that we're being effective in the use of our data and other things like that to improve our trainings. So again, the who, it's Carrie, myself, and then Amanda, who's taking leadership on this. And we're also working with external evaluators from CDPHE, the Health Surveys and Evaluation Branch, to assist with data collection, which is really great. And then why, the why is really all for the implementation plan. So based on the findings, we will develop a collaborative implementation plan for addressing the strategies laid out in Goal 5. So we're really being methodical and intentional about all of our phases. So this was framed by 3 research questions. And the first one was, who is our target audience and what are their characteristics? So this is looking really at demographics. So things like size, free and reduced, urban versus rural, 4-day school week, et cetera. The second are, what are the factors affecting program participation and access? So this is where we kind of get into the nitty gritty. What are the attitudes of food service directors around participation and access? What practices are currently being implemented in SFAs that show an increase in participation? Do best practices vary by demographic? And is there a positive correlation between best practices and program participation? As well as, what are the barriers affecting participation and access? And do the barriers vary by demographic? So we're looking at all of that information. And then finally, what are the needs of sponsors to increase program participation and access? So those are what our work is being based off of. So just to break down this needs assessment a little bit more, it's made up of 4 components. And I know we've talked a lot about the survey. I'm going to get into that a little bit more. But first, I just want to do an overview of the 4 components. So we have a literature review that we did just to do a scan of all the research and articles that are out there nationwide. We also have the statewide survey, which we talked about a lot in our last meeting, and I'm going to get into a little bit more. We also have our key informant interviews. It's kind of the next step from the surveys, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. And then our community asset map, which I will also discuss a little bit more as well, but I really want to focus on the survey right now since there was a lot of excitement around that during the last meeting. So this was administered online last month, and it included best practices, challenge, training needs, attitudes, and plans around existing, increasing student participation in adding or expanding existing programming. And we vetted this survey with 2 food service directors from a large and small district, and we revised the survey based on feedback. And we also included questions around the 4-day school weeks, because as you saw from Carrie's part of her presentation, it's a huge part of our state. A lot of those are smaller districts, but it still encompasses quite a big portion of our state. And then also, who are the most valuable community partners in supporting child nutrition programs? So we're excited to say that we had an 88% completion rate, which if you've ever administered an online survey is pretty wonderful. And we really did a lot of outreach for this. We did direct outreach to superintendents. We really, I don't want to say held people accountable, but we really made sure people took the survey. And so we also, this is really to help them ultimately. It's to help us help them. So we're really excited about that, and we feel like everyone was really on board with these efforts and will continue to be on board. So we also, through this process, we decided to add an additional supplemental survey to non-SFA summer sponsors that went out earlier this month, just addressing summer questions, and this is also being administered by CDPHE. So preliminary results, we're kind of going to give you a cliffhanger though, because we're not going to give you too much detail right now, but we had a really robust number of respondents, so this data is really rich and meaningful for us and hopefully for all of you. And it really gave us an accurate snapshot of what's happening in the state. So of course the data can be reviewed in a variety of ways, broken out by different indicators, 4-day school weeks, free and reduced, etc. So, excuse me. We're going to look at respondents by enrollment first. And on the left side, you'll see that breakdown that Carrie showed previously of the number of SFAs by student enrollment. And so you can see how many SFAs fall into those categories. And then you see our respondents on the right side. And you can see that because the response rate was so high, most of the categories were you know, we've hit every single grouping of student enrollment. And this is, so 183 SFAs completed the survey, which represented a combined enrollment of over 750,000 students. So that is pretty exciting. And then I also wanted to break this down by free and reduced. So free and reduced lunch percent, as you can see in this chart, that those in the highest and lowest FRL bracket had 100% completion, and then the other two brackets, 25 to 50% and 50 to 75%, had a really high response rate as well. So again, moral of the story, we had really good coverage. The survey ultimately speaks to the majority of the state, which is what we were looking for. So the next steps, the evaluators are currently conducting in-depth analysis on the survey results to identify trends and responses. So an example might be, will the training needs vary by school district? Will the training needs vary by rural urban? So we don't want to be premature in sharing what's happening, because we really want to take the time to really make sure that we're analyzing the results by these different indicators before we share with you all. So the next steps, besides that, we have the key informant interviews. And this is really a way to drill down into specific audiences. So we hope to have key informants with people representing various sides of child nutrition programs, different geographic areas, different types of operators, such as CACFP, and other provision programs, such as CEP and Provision 2. And the sample size will be less than 20 food service staff and potentially other school administration. And the interview dates are scheduled through mid-March to beginning of April. So we're starting on that now, which is really exciting. And, oh yeah.
Can you share how you chose, was there like a criteria, like a test, or just what it was?
It's a combination of who is willing to do it, but also we really want to make sure that we represented those different audiences. So make sure we have from 4-day school weeks, make sure we have from large, small school districts, and kind of make sure that we're touching upon all the different areas that we're looking at. But also people have to be willing, obviously, as well.
We also, not to be a big brother, but we can see how everyone responded. And so we can look at certain questions. We asked a few questions on where school districts are, or SFAs, and their kind of stage of change. So are they interested in expanding their program? Are they interested in increasing participation? Are they not? Are they kind of in the planning but need something more to move forward? So we were able to look at where the different SFAs are and their interest in increasing participation access, so we can look at who answered in those buckets and then get a nice sample to understand where everyone, a full spectrum of where people are at.
Good question. So the community asset map, hopefully it will look a little better than that picture that I found on Google Images. But the purpose is really to have a visual opportunity to see where see what's happening where. So this will include program participation such as the different programs we operate, National School Lunch, School Breakfast, et cetera. Student participation in meal counts, free and reduced percentage, 4-day school week, SNAP participation and enrollment, and other potential indicators. So we can layer this hopefully with some different health indicators. And so this is part of our project. We also, just to keep in mind sustainability considerations, you know, these maps are only as good as their current data sets. So we're going to be starting on this with our planning grant, but hopefully this is something that can morph into something that can be useful for other people as well. So just some external communication considerations I want to discuss. There's been a lot of excitement around the survey, and we're really incredibly pleased with how receptive everyone's been with it. And we just want to make sure that if you could help us get the following messages out, that the information provided is really going to help the school nutrition unit curate appropriate training resources and partnerships. So it's a really great opportunity to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the different SFAs and operators throughout the state. And after the data is analyzed, we will share the results with stakeholders. But I do want to add that we really want to be inclusive with the results and have everyone help with interpretation. Every organization has a different lens in which they look at it and a different angle, and we want to make sure that that's something that we're working together on. And we want to continue to communicate with external partners throughout the process. So it's been a really exciting time with this survey, and we're really pleased that everyone's been so helpful. We've tapped into a lot of food service directors for this, and they've been really responsive. So we just want to thank you again. And I'm going to pass this on to Ashley to talk about the summer food service program. And I guess maybe take questions. We'll do more questions at the end of Ashley's.
Sure. So summer food service program, commonly referred to as it provides meals to kids for free at approved sites throughout Colorado. And so any child 18 years and younger can go to a summer meal site and receive a free meal. To give you a brief overview of what the landscape in Colorado looks like, we had 85 sponsors last year and 680 sites, and we served a little over 1.5 million meals. We are still ranked 43rd in the nation for our ratio of serving meals to kids in the summertime compared to the number of kids that are free and reduced price meal eligible through the National School Lunch Program. So this statistic that's on the slide is showing that in 2016 to 2017, only 8 children received summer lunch for every 100 children who receive lunch during the school year in Colorado that are free and reduced price meal eligible. So although we did have a 2% increase in the number of meals served last year in program year 2018, we still have a lot of room to improve participation and access in this program. So that leads me to program goals for this summer. 2 goals include increasing access to the program as well as increasing participation. I wanted to give you a pretty high-level overview of a couple of our strategies that we're using in both of these goal areas, because our office comes up with a strategic outreach plan each year for this program, and I feel like these are some unique strategies that we're pulling in this year and can be an opportunity for you all to get involved in. So as far as increasing access, one strategy is to maximize the types of meal services offered. So we want to encourage all of our sponsors to offer the maximum number of meals that they can per site. So with the program, open sites can offer up to 2 meals a day, and we'd like to see that happening at every open site when possible. We also want to encourage innovative meal service models. One of those models is working with No Kid Hungry to expand the community meals model, and that has been piloted the last 2 summers out in Burlington, Colorado. So this model allows for family homes to become the summer meal sites. So we're looking to expand that to 4 additional sponsors this year in various areas, in rural areas in Colorado. We also are hoping to expand outreach to underserved areas, and we've identified Prowers, Eagle, and Gilpin as counties to target this summer. For increasing participation, we also want to maximize our outreach and promotion. So we worked with our communications office to create an outreach toolkit, and that's available on our webpage. So sponsors and partner organizations can use the materials that are available to help increase awareness about the program. One new material that's available this year is a robocall that was recorded by Governor Polis, and Hunger Free Colorado helped make that happen. And we also are hoping to increase summer meal quality, because we know that increase in meal quality increases participation. And so we've actually started this process last year, developing a survey to evaluate meal quality while we're out on our monitoring visits during the summer. So just really quickly on a few key ways that you all can get involved is really to help promote the program. And as I mentioned, we have that outreach toolkit. There's a lot of different materials that are included there. So we have postcards, we have a magnet template, as I mentioned, the robocalls. We also have sample social media posts and pictures and newsletter templates. So feel free to use any of those materials. It's also really important to educate families and communities about the program and where they can find sites. So the 2 main methods in Colorado are to text food or comida to the text line of 877-877, or to refer them to the kidsfoodfinder.org website, where you can see a map, type in an address, and sites near you will populate. So if you're promoting the program out and you're not using outreach materials created by us, this is a great thing to plug into any of the outreach that you're doing. And then also, it's important to identify partnership opportunities. We have a lot of our sponsors partnering with food banks to offer free food pantry or a free farmer's market at the site. So while the kids are eating a healthy meal, parents can go and receive food for the week. Also think about opportunities for grant funding, or even helping with grant writing, so that our sponsors could receive additional funding to offer adult meals, which have been shown to increase participation, or offer activities at the site. And then lastly, thinking about ways to get involved. So by providing site activities, being a volunteer, or volunteering to help serve the meals, or be a site supervisor at the site. So there are a lot of different ways to get involved with the program, but these are the top 3 that we are really hoping to encourage people to take advantage of. That is all I had. Questions?
Right, thanks. A couple of things. So thanks for that. And it is great that we've moved from 46 to 43.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the planning season's coming up, right, pretty quickly. Have you guys identified like the highest ROI areas, so the places where we know that there is a large amount of kids who could really benefit from this program, that we might be able to actually move on in this kind of 3-month ramp up that we might have?
Mm-hmm.
And if you have that, like, I'm assuming that there are some funding gaps. So let's just think about like Metro Denver, and there's probably some big missing areas, right, where we could expand. So one would be where there's the largest number of kids. Because obviously we want to do the whole state, but for this we might have to prioritize. So what would be the highest ROI communities, and which ones might be shovel ready and just need some funding gaps closed, so that then we can go to foundations in a very quick turnaround and say things like, Kyle, things like they could serve 20,000 meals if they had this in this community. So I would be really curious about what we can do right now to make this happen?
So the 3 counties I mentioned, Gilpin, Prowers, and Eagle, have been identified because they have very high free and reduced numbers, and we see that those areas are underserved with the number of open summer sites available. There are also communities that have started the planning. They're just maybe needing additional support, whether it's around funding or locating a site or locating a meal vendor. So there's a few different areas of gaps that we generally see when we're finding that people aren't implementing the program. Those counties are also being targeted through the No Kid Hungry because transportation can also be a huge issue. So looking at that community meals model might be a way to help get this program started and see how we could expand from there.
I think that's great. So, and I think, again, looking at the community, those are small and medium counties. And I do think, like, the percentages are really important. So we know that there's a high percentage, but there may not be the highest numbers. So I wonder if there's a dual strategy where we're looking at the shovel-ready, potentially trying to figure out, how we might be able to collectively support that and get funding. But are there areas where there's the numbers, just the sheer numbers of kids that are concentrated, where we might be able to, again, like, kind of get those numbers up?
The USDA has a capacity builder map, so that is where I pull the numbers from, and it's based on census block group.
Yes, yep.
So you could see within there the number of kids free and reduced eligible, but as far as identifying, like, am I hearing you correctly, like identifying a location where there's going to be a certain number of kids a day at? Or
well, as part of that, I think it is looking at the census numbers, right, and then looking at whether or not they're being covered. So I think I caught you guys before the meeting, and the food banks presented yesterday, and they're the largest Feeding Colorado network, and they said I think they served like 113,000 meals last year, and then we see like Mesa County is actually doing 27,000. So given that we have some existing partnerships with these food banks, can we provide some type of scale up, because the areas that they operate in, many of them are these larger counties where there's a lot of numbers. So again, I don't want to think holistically about the whole state, but when you have we have a 3-month ramp up, that we could maybe expand some of the capacity of already existing programs, sponsor sites, administrative sites, so that we could actually get some traction into those underserved communities by census tract where a small expansion of capacity could really go a long way. So again, the highest ROI in terms of meals being able to be served.
Yeah, and what we started looking at too with the data we have is our meal counts based by county. So we have some information based on the last 2 years around what that looks like. So we could compare, any gaps based on the census for that. I think our data person would be able to do something like this fairly quickly, but I could check in and see if we could at least identify, maybe the top 5.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm kind of asking, because I do think that there's some willingness by these sponsor sites to fill the gaps if they could just have a bump in funding, and then it makes them more sustainable because they're doing more quantity.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to be intentional about the expansion, because we have really solid sponsors that are currently operating the program, and it's looking at their capacity. So not necessarily adding a lot of new sponsors or a lot of new sites, because we've seen that in the past. That doesn't necessarily correlate to an increase in participation. So, but yeah, if I could look into that a little bit more and identify some sponsors that may be in those areas to reach out to.
Yeah, I think it'd be a really great opportunity for folks to get involved here and leverage their community relationships too. And I agree, we want to probably use the folks who've already been successful, help them expand, understand what that dollar figure looks like, and then pilot that expansion in a way that would be sustainable. So I would just be curious if we might be able to have that conversation, given the timing that we're looking at. So,
Sure.
I just wanted to do a little quick time check here. We've probably got maybe 3 or 4 minutes for questions on this. I want to make sure we leave time for Dan to share a little bit, and we'll have some questions after that. So I just want to.
And Naomi's got a few slides on CACFC.
Let's move this.
Don't forget about CCFP.
Yeah, don't forget about these. They're the gap filler.
We got
That's right.
Yep.
do this.
I will try to be quick.
Is this quicker?
So thank you.
There you go.
So thank you. I'm Naomi, the CCFP director, and today I brought, thanks Danielle, Megan with me. Improvement, performance management specialist for the Nutrition Services branch. And I think I shared with you at the last meeting, I approached my 1-year anniversary at the stage. So I thought I'd better bring Megan in case I can't answer a question historically. So she's here for moral support. So thank you, Megan. All right. So I just want to share a little bit of overview, very high level about CCFP today. Share about our outreach efforts, and then at the end, if we have time, I wanted to see if the work group had suggestions of where maybe they could support child nutrition programs. So we'll see how this goes. As most of you probably know, the CCFP is a sister program to the National School Lunch Program. And I've worked very closely with the ladies sitting around me, and we talk about how we can maximize child nutrition programs frequently. The CCFP's funding comes through USDA and provides reimbursement for healthy meals and snacks offered to children and adults in daycare settings. The CCFP helps the institution save money by supplementing the cost of nutritious food and freeing up funds to spend on other areas such as operations and personnel. And then I have a list of what type of setting CCFP could be offered, and then I also list the partner organizations. And because of time, I'll just kind of quickly go through this. Okay? Here is the eligibility. And what I want to point out here that's not on the slide, NSLP can be used when there is a school day. CCFP can be used when there is a school day and when school is not in session. That includes holidays and school vacations and weekends. So something to keep in mind. I wanted to highlight that. And we talked about 4-day school weeks in the past where the districts that operate the 4-day school week, they can offer NSLP the 4 days, and on the 5th day, they can offer CCFP.
And is that like 2 meals or just one?
1 snack and 1 meal.
Great.
It also depends on how they're participating with CCFP on that 5th day. So if they're coming in as a licensed child care program and utilizing the benefit in that sense, and they're collecting the income verification, income eligibility, they could claim 2 meals and a snack with that information. If they're coming in from the after-school at-risk side, then it is the 1 meal and 1 snack at that higher rate of reimbursement. So it depends. Yeah.
So the institution needs to meet child care and health and safety standards. For-profit centers can participate in our program. They just have to demonstrate that 25% of their participants come from a low-income household. We've been working on reducing barriers to participate in our program, and it's more than just school districts. We're working statewide. We've looked at our application, and we've reduced some of the steps that created unnecessary burden to not only the customer, but to our staff. We have reduced paperwork. Menu productions used to be required when serving meals and snacks. It's no longer required, which reduces some paperwork. And then we also looked at the review process for all customers. I did list school food authorities up here because CDE and I have worked, well, and Megan, we've all worked together to look at ways to improve the process. maybe review some steps. And if we are going to review a school district within the same year, we will work with the SFA on the timing of the review. And also, if we can share records, we will do that as well. This is just some of our partnerships that I wanted to share with you. Again, trying to go quickly. Outreach, I just want to mention that we're looking forward to working with CDE with their newly found data. We're excited to learn more about SFAs and what resources they have and what they don't have, and maybe how CFP could support feeding children. The approach that we've taken with outreach is building awareness about our program. So when we talk to, for example, a school district, the school district may not participate with us, but we might ask, if you don't have enough resources to participate with us right now, do you know somebody in the community that maybe has enough available resources to participate with our program? So we kind of use them, you know, to not use them, but we talk to them to share information, hoping they'll share it out with their community. And again, we continue to work with our friends at CDE. Where CDCFP thinks that we could use some support, Jennifer, this was something you asked in our last meeting. It's just making community connections to support children and youth, and understand the communities that we're serving. And I think the survey that was sent out will help us identify some next steps. We do have one more slide, and we were hoping to just ask the work group for any ideas or suggestions on how they can support the child nutrition program.
If we don't have a lot of time, I would like to jump on a call, because I think there's a couple of connections that would be really interesting to make, and it goes to your new funding opportunity. So I just had the great honor of helping Garfield County kick off their food summit, and there was so much interest in how, like, having the library really host some of these CACFP summer meals and really getting involved. And I'm wondering if there might be a way that as communities look at that funding opportunity for community planning, that we really put forward the amazing work that's happening at the state as ways that need to be kind of integrated into their proposal. Because, you know, these guys are the experts, and I think, you know, making sure that people are aware of all the work that you do and really get that coordination going might be really interesting. And again, if we run out of time, I think we can do Dan's, but I'd love to come back to this, and if not, I'd really love to hop on a call in the interim because of the time limits that we're looking at on some of these programs. Absolutely. And the richness that's in the room. So I just wanted to kind of say that, and you know, maybe, Kyle, we could also talk about how important this planning work is in making sure that it's not overlooked, especially when people might just be focusing on SNAP and WIC, because the interconnectedness between access is so intense on that. And I don't necessarily know, when I say SNAP enrollment will drive your free and reduced school lunch, that will then drive, people just don't know this. And so how might we kind of get that information out, I think would be really important. That's all I wanted to say.
And that was my main, but I'll save for later, but that how do we then support this work in the field with schools and child care centers and these community organizations. So, yeah, I would love to dive into that.
And that's just a really robust conversation to have. So we need opportunities to do that.
Then bring it back.
And I'll just add, Dara or I are happy to have that conversation. The work has changed a little bit since last year. We worked with Kaiser and, you know, on the planning grants. But some of what has remained is work that we've certainly learned. I think Kaiser at the time was also on board with, but we learned from our outreach enrollment work. So a lot of our WIC and SNAP is based on what we learned around Medicaid and Affordable Care Act expansion. And part of that is having sort of required partners, now whether that's state or not, and then having sources of data, which can look different. Every community has its own source of data, and you can go to certain communities and give them state data, and they say this is done. But that idea of having a robust planning process with it required might be too strong. I'm not sure we'll require a lot, but we will require certain partners at the table. And so I think that's a worthwhile conversation to have, particularly given the ability for us to have that with some folks that can go back out and talk to other communities as you hear them, rather than everyone having to call Dara or I or somebody individually. So.
And we also have a national expert on the phone with No Kid Hungry that's been helping, you know, schools across the state or across the country implement and community partners implement that. So I think that's, you know, an asset that we haven't yet been able to tap because of the level setting, but certainly, you know, national partners who do this and are willing to partner with us will be an important piece.
I think the WIC innovation model is really interesting because in a way that's what we're doing with this needs assessment, is to prioritize those strategies that are, you know, our districts need across states. So how do we align all that work together? I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry for all the questions. But I'm just curious, given that this is like a multi-year strategy and like effort, what are some of the ways that you all are thinking about the census and conversations? Given that like a lot of this programmatic information is based on like information collected from the census, are you all engaging in those conversations in any way or any advocacy around that, or is that not really?
They can't advocate or lobby.
Well, I mean, even like educating people as to like, hey, this is coming up in the next year. These are some of the challenges we know we're facing in 2020 as it relates to the census. Like, just curious if that's a conversation that's being had and if we're keeping that in the back of our minds as we're thinking about using some of that data.
It's not happening at our level.
Yeah, there's kind of enough to do right now. Like, we can only go up based on old info. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really good. Data will help us maximize the rate. So I think that's important. Comment.
Yep, like it or not.
I know our hotline will be encouraging callers to make sure that they're filling it out, but it's the only entry point we have right now.
Great, so I'm going to be able to move on to Dan. Dan, I'm hoping maybe you can keep this to 15 minutes or less, so we got a little time at the end to think about how all these great pieces come together. So my talk says 11:30, so hoping we can have you going just before 11:45 when you can come.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, that's, no, I'm here. Well, we're going to show the video, and I think the video in 5 minutes will give you a good why summary of our program. So I'll let the video roll.
Thanks, Dan.
So hi, my name is Dana Sharp. I'm the Director of Food and Nutrition Services for School District 51, and that's the Mesa County Valley School District. We have an enrollment of 22,000 students. We have close to 45% grade reduced population. We're a very spread out school district. We go all the way from Palisades on one end of the valley and the east side of Grand Junction all the way to Loma on the west, which is about a 30-mile distance between the two. So it's a pretty spread out county. We have over close to 40 schools where we operate school breakfast and school lunch programs, and we serve approximately about 10,000 plus meals a day. And in the summertime, it got us thinking about, well, how do these kids that we feed, 10,000 meals a day, and most of those are grade reduced kids coming from struggling families, the thought hit us pretty hard several years ago. Well, how do we feed these kids during the summertime? How are they getting food? You know, yes, there are other programs out there through charitable resources in the community, along with the SNAP program or food stamps. But we felt like this could be a program where we could truly get hands or food in the hands of kids in our community that are in the high poverty areas. So we did look at, and we researched what would it look like to do a summer meal program, take food out to the parks and the neighborhoods and the low-income housing areas of our community. And we used some great tools to help us navigate those decisions, one of which is the CDE nutrition page, another is the Share Our Strength national page, and it has a toolkit for mobile meals. It's actually called a mobile meal playbook, and it walks you through getting it set up. But for us, the big why to why we wanted to do this is we really wanted to help out those kids, those families in our community, to have a good food source for those kids, so when they came back to school in the fall, they were ready to learn and ready to be successful. We found, as we piloted the program through 2015 and then through these last 4 years that we've operated the program, we've grown the numbers significantly. We went from serving 5,000 meals the first summer to serving over 30,000 meals last year. So it's a pretty significant increase. And for us, it is a lot of work, and it's a lot of extra work. And so I get the fact that as a director, you might be looking at this and weighing your time and against your duties that you have during the school year with the school meal program and all the other regulatory work and challenges that we have as operators. And I get that. There's a lot. There's a lot of work that we have to deal with. But I want you to know, and I want you to understand that the extra time that we've invested to make this program work has meant a lot to our staff. It's really meant a lot to the community, and most of all, it means a lot to those kids. And when you're out there on the stops in these sites, and you're seeing them get the food and how excited they are to see the Lunch Blizzard food truck show up and the look on their face, and you see the help that it gives to those parents, that's why we do what we do.
A lot of the times over the summer, me and Dan work really close together on actually finding locations that have a higher need. And that's really, it's really touching. It's also really sad sometimes, but it's really, really cool because I know that we're making a difference. When I first started, I didn't realize the amount of kids that didn't get food over the summer. And that really touches base with me because growing up, my mom was a teen mom. There were times when I only had hot dogs for, 3 days in a row, and I only had, lunch and dinner. That's all I had. And so it was really important when I started seeing the amount of kids that we started feeding, and it grows every summer. I think one of the most amazing kind of harms or unintended consequences, what have you, from this program has been the community aspect of it. When the Lunch Blizzard goes into communities, it's almost like a mini block party takes place where you have neighbors, you have caregivers, you have parents coming out with their children, and people are just meeting one another, getting a break, and then children in all communities that might be of greater need than others are getting a great, healthy meal for the day. That's been really wonderful.
Okay, well, I hope the video cuts down the time you need in this presentation. So I guess I'll leave it to some questions, but I do have a couple of quick thoughts. Just first of all, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And sorry if I sound a little hoarse. I have some sinus challenges, so getting through that. But anyways, first of all, I just want to note to our CDE partners in the room, did you notice there was a Liberty sign on the food truck?
I saw that.
Okay, just want to make sure you caught that. All kidding aside, I definitely, there's so much information I want to share, but what I'd like to direct the audience to, and any potential directors around the state and communities that are looking at the program, is really to go to our D51 Schools webpage, and if they just go to those two tab prompts from the parent page to the meal page and just find Lunch Lizard or just search Lunch Lizard, you'll find we just recently updated it with this particular video that we just put together for the CDE, and also 3 other videos. And so if you're a director of a program or a community member or an SFA or anyone that's looking to do a summer meal program, I would just encourage you to go through that information along with CDE's website on the summer food program, along with Share Our Strength. Those were really helpful when we piloted this program back in 2015. Going through all the different wonderful materials at both those web pages really helped us walk through the logistics of designing the program, and from the pilot summer all the way and improving it each year. And each year we've added improvements, we've added stops, and Right now, we're running 3 food trucks through the summer. There's a link on that web page that has the menu. There's a link that has our routes that we do with the 3 different routes. The number of stops we do is 6 stops per day on each truck, and it's just so much stuff that I can't share today in the meeting, but that those that are really looking at some of the details of running the program can go ahead and take a look at. The other one there's the other videos that we put together talk about the financial planning aspects, which I know most operators or directors would be concerned about. We have been financially sustainable since the pilot year. The fact that the summer meal program has a higher reimbursement helps us with that. But we've also done a good job of managing our labor and our staffing, and along with our food cost. And we run a pretty simple meal program. We run a hot and a cold meal program, so kids can get at these different stops the hot meal choice of the day. And if they don't want that, then we have a pre-packed unitized grab and go meal with basically a sandwich, fruit, veg, and a milk that they can get. And the other one we really looked at on this program was we really wanted to be efficient, but still overall friendly. And if you notice the trucks that we designed all the way down to the branding with Lonnie, our lunch lizard, which we've nicknamed him based on a local supporter of our school programs. But anyways, everything about it was we wanted it to be Western Colorado. We wanted it to have a Colorado feel. We wanted it to be friendly. And so the branding piece was a big piece. Gosh, I'm just going through some quick other couple of notes here, but if you have any other questions, I'll get to that too. But Fridays has really become, Jody talked about this has become a real community event in these communities when we make these stops throughout the summer. And the Fridays is really, we've added into that. We're going to be piloting a farmer's market vehicle that's going to be following the Lunch Lizard routes on Fridays, along with Kids Aid, who's a weekend backpack program, has already been following us on Fridays. And so the Friday route has really been a fun way to kick off giving kids food for the weekends. And it's even going to be added with more local sourcing with the farmer stuff coming up this year. And the other thing I want to mention is that we do offer it Monday through Friday, and we offer it through the majority of the summer. I know a lot of summer programs out there just go a couple of weeks or maybe just half the summer time frame. We really make a point to be out there in the community for the majority of the summer. Anyways, I could keep talking and yakking forever. But anyways, I would just encourage people to take a look at our webpage, go through the videos, go through all the different links. And if you have any other questions or need information on our program, then feel free to contact me at any time. And lastly, I'll just state that it doesn't, a couple of weeks doesn't go by where I don't get a phone call from a district from all over parts of the country. One was Alaska, asking about the program and asking about materials and how did we get it going. And so it's fun to be able to share that, and we enjoy sharing that excitement.
Could I ask, how many staff do you have that operate the program throughout the summer?
Right now, between summer sites and the Lunch Lizard trucks, we run about a 25-person staff. Typically, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I adding the backpack is brilliant. That's all I'm going to say. We need to be partnering. I'm guessing the food bank there helps with that?
They do. Food bank in our area is the principal donor or seller of discounted food to Kids Aid.
Awesome.
So we have time for some questions. Folks have questions.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last question.
Oh, that we have time for questions. So I just have one quick question. That program is fairly self-sustaining after the initial startup cost, correct? So if other schools wanted to do the Lunch Lizards, they would need startup costs for the van, correct?
You got it. Yeah, your reimbursement from the SFSP, it definitely is enough to cover your food and your labor cost. The cost that you're going to have to go out and try to find a fundraiser or a donor or a grant to help fund is for the food trucks. Fortunately for us, we had a partner with the Western Colorado Community Foundation who have helped us buy the first truck. And then after the first year, we had so much excitement in the community that I had all the different civic clubs, Lions and Rotaries and private businesses that helped us buy the second truck. And so it's, yeah, I think the first main hurdle for a director would be is to help, or try to find a community foundation, local partner to help you get that first one to get you going. I do want to say this too. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I was just going to say, our Lunch Lizard food trucks are used year round. Not only has it been a benefit for us to have these vehicles to provide food for our kids in the summertime in our area, but it's also been great for the school district and for our taxpayer. Instead of building out a $400,000 or a $500,000 kitchen at a school, our alternative schools and charter schools, we use the Lunch Lizard food trucks during the school year to provide meal service for those schools.
Okay, I know Teresa wanted to hop in here. I just want to get a sense of price range for the food truck.
By the way, that is a very challenging part of the process, I will say that, but well worth it. But the prices range anywhere. Our first one we got, luckily, off of Craigslist from the guy that used to sell Mediterranean food out at CU in Boulder. But anyways, so yeah, that was just serendipitous. But that was about $68,000–$70,000. The second food truck ended up being, we went to a builder out of Denver who's now been picked up by the Attorney General for fraud, but and we experienced the same challenges. But so I would definitely say be careful and be wary of who you go through on a local builder for food trucks. But we built one for 35, but then we had to make about 15,000 in improvements because they didn't finish all the specs out on it. So that was kind of a nightmare that particular year, but we got through it.
And I would just add that this is what Dan does in their food trucks, their model, but a food truck in the sense can be as simple as a van that isn't being used by the school district. So I think Danielle mentioned just maybe slap a magnet or some branding so it's not just a creepy white van showing up with food, but it can be on a much simpler model.
Well, I should state that by necessity, because the builder had delayed us on our second food truck, we had to outfit a cargo van, just a simple little Chevy Astro cargo van, into a vehicle that we at least could do ballpark type food and do grab and go meals. And that's become our Palisade route vehicle. When I talk about our 3 trucks and our 3 routes, well, Lunch Lizard 1.5, the cargo van, is what that is. It's just a simple, didn't take a lot of money. And we basically put hot hold camera units in the back to hold the food at temp, and everything's pre-packed at a commissary site. So it makes the delivery model real easy and simple. And yeah, you can, so it doesn't have to be some $60,000 food truck.
Okay, I also know that there's a mobile grocery store that works in the far northeast that is a school bus, and the district helped assisted with that. So.
Great. And Danielle, do you want to add anything about we use 2 white catering vans that are not used during the summer, and I think we paid about $300 total to get 4 4-foot by 4-foot magnets with our logo on it, but we stick on the side. Real cheap.
Jeffco has 2 buses that were donated from transportation and then outfitted with awnings, and then they just put fold-out tables and folding chairs. And then they put some, kind of like Dan talked about, holding equipment on the inside, so refrigerators, hot boxes.
This question came up in Garfield trying to figure out how they might get that food out to their furthest sites. And the question was whether like a food could be properly packed. Could they use public transit to get it to the site where it could be picked up by the sponsor site?
It depends entirely on their local health department's willingness to allow that.
Okay. Okay.
If it's in Wells County, I can tell you no.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Unless we can get CDPHE to issue some guidance. Okay, that was just a question that came up.
We have seen partnerships though with like FedEx delivering the food in different states and other models in that, and that I think would probably be something that would be more feasible with the health department regulations.
So we've got a few minutes left. And I know we've devoted a bunch of time today to kind of some of our bigger entities sharing some information. So I'd love to hear from those of you in the room who are with community-based organizations maybe what resonated with you today, or where you see your work and the work of these entities aligning to try to propel some of this forward, or questions that you all might have. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I just want to open up the floor to that conversation. We've got lots of great information today, and I'm always thinking about how do we get these big programs aligned with community-based work and what that looks like. So wanted to give some space for that here in the last minute. Together this morning.
So Jennifer prompted a really good question, I thought, of Ashley about finding out where those needs were in the state. Where do we leave that? Is that something that we're going to share? I know we talked about census data, but the point being, are there short-term things we could be working on while we're working on long-terms, like finding those kind of easy doors? So if I knew about areas that I happen to be working on, how could I help facilitate that in those areas?
Okay.
So
state folks, what's useful in terms of having that information.
So we can definitely share out the meal count numbers and look at maybe where the gaps are related to the census data. I think right now with what we're focusing on is more of that awareness and outreach piece. So probably closer to May, we would have a list of where our sites are, and then that would be a great opportunity for those specific communities to really focus in on outreach and communicating where sites are available to families.
yeah, I mean, I certainly can do outreach, but I would be very curious to know if we're missing something there, if there's more energy needed around, leveraging those partnerships to support that need.
Is there any utility in looking at last year's sites and identifying any of those gaps? And I know that, right, I mean, we're kind of in between, like, what we know about this year and what we knew about last year.
Right, so that capacity builder map I referenced will show sites year over year, and I think it goes back to the last 3 or so years.
Perfect.
Maybe 5.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
So yeah, that's really the tool that we use, and really encourage other organizations to look at it. If you're zoning in on a specific location or community, you can really identify gaps there.
Rainey, one of the things that I do when I'm trying to plan my sites for summer is I do some maps that Ashley is referencing.
Okay.
And I go back 3 or 4 years and identify other community partners that we're offering. And then I'll just reach out to Ashley and say, hey, are you expecting to see them again?
Okay.
Because as we have community partners drop off, we know that there's going to be an underserved population, and that community partner doesn't sponsor again.
Right.
And that happens in the Greeley area summer after summer.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
And with this particular option, we'll take any and all summer sites and after school sites. As long as they qualify based on the requirements, and when you say take all, so we'll work with libraries, rec centers, boys and girls club schools. So if you have an organization that needs support on the food side of things,
Okay.
we provide the food and handle all reimbursement, monitoring, training, everything.
And I'll add the piece to Chris's point that from the CCP standpoint for the after-school feeding, because we take on a lot of sites, is one of the biggest barriers that we have helped address is for those non-traditional sites who don't have, who are legally exempt from child care licensing. We have a partnership with the environmental health side of CDPHE to help overcome those barriers. And Chris and her group, and I'm sure Kathy will know soon, how the sponsors can help with that process too. So if it's a library site, that's okay. It's free. So thank you.
What else? Doc, thinking about your work already. Are there other barriers that you've been hearing about? Keeping kids from going to program, I'm sort of figuring like coming all the way to the end piece of this, right? And of those folks, this is sort of come from, right?
You have to remember, it's not an if we build it, they will come. Because we built it and they haven't come.
Yeah.
So, I think going to them is, to our communities, is a better idea. Some of them don't want to go into the school. Some of them don't want to eat breakfast at 8 o'clock, so they're not getting up that early.
Yep.
So I think we got to think about the hours we offer things. And roads can be a barrier in the, I had 2 sites in real close proximity in Jeffco, but we had to because there's a major road that they couldn't cross. So just have to think about some of those.
did you go about learning that and incorporating that into your practice, right? So for folks who either have an experience, they don't know what they are, or thinking about how to learn about what may be preventing them from making those connections.
I worked with our local public health department. They already had an existing group to talk about school food issues, and so that was something. And I was new to Jefferson County, so I said, I don't know the communities, and we serve 5, 6, 7 different ones. So I need your help identifying where we should be, particularly with our mobile unit, and what are the barriers. So I think if you don't know your community layout, whether geography-wise or just for, you can live in a community and not always know where all the pockets of poverty are. So understand where that's at.
Hey, Jeremy, or if I could just add real quickly on Jeremy's point, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he's right on. When we build our routes and we go out and design the different locations, because again, with 3 routes at 16 different stops, and most of those are either parks that are with the city, and they're in routes that we go out and troubleshoot and drive through the communities and then talk through with some of the people through churches, through principals at schools in the area, through to community organizations that run different things in those areas to find out where are the best stops. And you're right, you got to be careful about safety and where kids might be crossing. But outside of the park stops, we do also contact our housing resources here in the community, and that way we get a listing of the low-income housing. And not only can we then email and contact those families in that area to try to figure out if that's going to be a good area for us to go to or not. But some of our stops are low-income housing apartments where they just have like a little green space within that community with a little playground. And so there is legwork to be done, and some of that information you can get off of the Share Our Strength webpage on walking through a checklist of things like that.
Something that I hear, and I wonder if it rings true for folks in here, is that the youth that are showing up to summer sites tend to be 6th grade and younger, and we've focused groups on high schoolers, and they say a lot of the advertising is really geared towards younger kids, and they don't think that they should go. And so when you mentioned a volunteer sort of situation I thought it might be interesting for kids to come volunteer at sites or figure out how to incorporate it so that there's a little bit more ownership, but that also might bring their friends in, just in terms of gaps and ways to hit big groups of people quickly. I think 7th to 12th grade, just from what I've heard, are not participating.
Well, I can speak from our experience.
Go ahead.
Oh, I could wait. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask Geraldine if No Kid Hungry has marketing materials for older kids that have been effective in other communities.
Sorry, I had to come off mute there. We do not have a separate set of marketing materials specifically for teens. I will follow up after this call with my coworker who works a little bit more on summer to see if there are some other partners across the country that have done this. I do know our partner in Texas had a local campaign meant to appeal more to middle school and teens, not based so much around visual marketing, but around the concept of Billy sent me. And so it was kind of like a word of mouth viral campaign, that it wasn't this is a charitable feeding assistance program, and this is more of a cool thing that the kids who know the code word can get a free meal. So just an example of doing different things that might appeal more to teens than to little kids.
That's really clever. I love that. Dan, did you want to pop in here as well?
Well, I just want to say we definitely, even with our branding and graphics, it definitely looks like the program's catered more to elementary and middle school kids. But our experience has been we still see teenagers and high school age students or kids that do show up at the sites. Now, it might not be as prevalent as the younger students, but we definitely see teenagers at a lot of our sites. In a lot of the cases, we do integrate with we have a volunteer coordinator that goes with each stop and each route, and they definitely use the older kids to help out with setting up and then doing some of the serve and then packing up when we go to our next stop. And so anyways, just wanted to say that yes, that does help with getting more of the older kids to integrate them into being volunteers.
Yeah, I'll just emphasize that that is a great idea and a great point that I think teens do, want to work and feel like they have a reason to be there, not that they're, kids in need
Just
who are
getting a free
getting
meal.
charity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an interesting thing to think about the sites we already have, right? Volume of those places.
Yeah, Bill has an update on a summer meal, House bill. Or you can announce it. Yeah, well, you're gonna, maybe talk about the summer protection.
Yeah, we got 2 minutes.
Or school protection.
Oh, lunch.
Yep.
Definitely. Dude, we got 2 minutes, somebody go.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so
Do it.
it's just an extension of what we were working on last year for the reduced prices of pay for students, and getting the pay to cover through 12th grade. And I think the last fiscal note we saw was like $450,000. So passed that a committee last week on a vote of 9 to 3, and it's sitting appropriations in the House. So House Bill 1171 for folks that want to.
How can we support it? Because, this is kind of a game changer, I think, for some school districts.
When we get out of appropriations, when we get to the Senate vote, I think that I'd be happy to follow up with this group and do all I'm gonna do is forward Stephanie's email. So, Stephanie will draft a call to action email. You can identify who your local legislator are, and what you can do is pick up the phone and call them and say, please support House Bill 1171. It'll be something by next week.
That's
Unless we
great.
have like an action alert or something.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, please be sure you get that to us, and then you can send that out to everybody, not just this group, right? Because there are lots of other people that haven't worked who will care very much about this.
Yes.
So we can share things like that with the broad group. If we share the funding opportunity that's coming up, we can share this with folks. Again, at this group, yes, critical. We all need to have that phone and call.
And show up.
With other folks, right? If you just show up, you just need to let us know. Definitely what those like things are. We're happy to share that.
And I should just email it to Kevin.
Okay.
I'll make sure you get it.
Keyword.
Keyword.
I mean, you can send it to any other link, but this is our hub of communication activity. So that'll be great. I'm sure. Okay, noon. Thank you very much. I think this was great. I learned a ton today, so thank you all for sharing your knowledge with us. Continue to marinate on these ideas, and we will do all the details, more information for you. That'd be great.
We have it out. Or put it on the website. If anyone's truly.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I just said we can make it the
No, you're awesome. Now the founding. Okay, yeah.
Hi. Patty, hard, finding out a little bit more. I totally, I'm trying to,
Yeah, no, everybody's here.
They are. How do we do that? Sure. Yeah, I agree. I don't have a card. Yeah, but my that might be in the email, and then I can. Yeah.